Hello, this is Dread from Epic Builds, and in today's video topic, we will go over Decoy Cinder Strike Umbral Blades Explosion Marksman, a build where you can cosplay as a World War II grenadier, as you got plenty of tricks left in your pocket. If you've been enjoying the steady flow of last Epoch content of late, I'd suggest leaving a like on the video, as that's the best way to support the channel. So funnily enough, this build was based around the Ignite version when I realized Decoy does dumb amounts of damage. Perry took this concept and ran with it. It was fun, but not what I call good per se, like good enough for a video. But then this patch introduced Umbral Blades, which has a lot of interactions with shadows, which means we can grab the nodes that drop Umbral Blades when we consume shadows, and also the node that drops shadows per decoy thrown, meaning every time we throw a decoy charge, we get 3 decoys, 3 shadows, then 3 Umbral Blades, which of course leads to ridiculous explosions. I was very hyped to try this, and apparently Amaranthi was too. We both ended up working with it at the same time. He actually ended up uploading his version just yesterday, which I 100% recommend you try it out and look at his as well, as his is a much higher budget version than mine and a little bit different. I would really suggest you check that out as well, as he's been putting a lot of work lately in the YouTube grind. We are obviously using Kelthan Blasting Agent. Only 2 lines of text on this matter for us. The 160% increased cooldown recovery speed with Decoy, which lowers it to about 5 seconds, and the 18% fire penetration. This allows us to essentially spam Decoy and clear screens with it. Trust me, it's so satisfying wiping a cheeky rare with a planned Decoy explosion. One of the best feelings in the game currently. We then use the node inside Cinder Strike that gives us 5 throwing flat damage per stack of oil coating, which we gain per time we attack with Cinder Strike and hit an enemy. Currently with my gear, we get close to 15 to 18 stacks, which, doing some quick math, that's a lot of throwing flat. This combined with Decoy's 600% added damage effectiveness, we can get a gigantic Decoy explosion every single time. I'm currently doing like 200k crits per Decoy, but you can get much crazier with some better gear. This normally wouldn't be enough to make the build feel good, but Umbral Blades was released in patch 8.4. I actually just did one of these, so it was fresh off my mind. So now whenever I use Decoy and consume our shadows, thanks to Cinder Strike's ability to throw daggers and consume shadows to do the same, it means we drop 3 Umbral Blades as well. Umbral Blades are simply just another way to leverage all of our throwing flat gained from Cinder Strike, and also, it gives us some extra clear, as sometimes in the higher corruption monoliths, 1 decoy barrage isn't enough to kill mobs, but 1 decoy barrage plus 3 Umbral Blades are more than enough to one-shot most things in the game. One of the biggest problems with this build is having to wait 5 to 6 seconds for Decoy's cooldown. You also require Kelthan Blasting Agent to play the build. Other uniques like Luraka's Cause are nice, but not needed technically. We have a small investment in Shadow Daggers, mainly because of Umbral Blades proccing Shadow Daggers and our throwing attack damage does benefit that. But Decoy is doing all of our damage, mainly we just want a little bit of extra clear with Umbral Blades. With all that being said, let's get into the video, shall we? Alright, here we are in game with the build. So for this skill rotation with this build, for normal monolith gameplay, you're pretty much just going to be spamming Cinder Strike on enemies. Now we are mainly utilizing crit vulnerability on this build to give us crits. So we need to hit things a few times to get more crit vulnerability, which will give us 5+ base chance to crit. So it makes it so that we always obviously crit. We obviously also want to get a bunch of oil coating stacks, as that gives us even more throwing damage. And then we just click Q and boom, 300k crit. There you go. And that's per decoy, by the way. And then of course we attack, and then we'll create Umbral Blades. So what happens is I attack here, and then we'll create shadows, which then of course create Umbral Blades, which then, proc Shadow Daggers and do damage. And that is pretty much simply how this build clears. Now, for single target, what you want to do is place down a smoke bomb, because Smoke Bomb will give us some increased damage and some extra shadows, which will of course turn into Umbral Blades, and then bam, 500k crit. There you go. It's like literally 500,000 damage per decoy, by the way. So yeah, pretty fun. So let's talk about skill, shall we? So for Cinder Strike, 2 points travel into ignition, doesn't do anything for us. 3 points into oil coating. This is pretty cool. If we have +2 to Cinder Strike, like on our Kelthan Blasting Agent using, of course, the legendary system, we would put 2 extra points in here so that we get 25% per stack. So we get a lot of increased damage, but 3 points is enough for now. 3 points into combustible. That ignite effect I don't care about, but the fire pen, since we're doing so much fire damage, the fire pen is just a bunch of more damage. 1 point travel to elusive. Elusive actually does something for us. Since we are apostasy, we gain glancing blow based on our dodge, so it actually gives us a decent amount of glancing blow. This on top of the dust shrouds we get is enough to cap us on most situations, which is really cool. We then of course take 5 points to coated darts. We get 5 throwing flat damage per coating of per stack. So that's a lot of throwing flat. And as you can tell with Decoy here, it has 600% added damage effectiveness per explosion. Hence why we're doing so much freaking damage. Then 2 points travel to kindling, although this helps us get to max fire strike stacks easily. 1 point to burning dagger. So this is what gives us this little extra dagger that goes around us and attacks. It's like a little throwing attack. Doesn't do much damage, but it gives us extra hits for crit vulnerability. 1 point into Flaming Fury, which will just give us less mana consumed, but since we're gaining mana with Cinder Strike, it doesn't matter. Then 1 point into Cone, so whenever we attack the first time, or whenever we attack with the third strike, we get a cone of them, which helps out with the crit vulnerability thing, like I said. An armor shred. Then 1 point to Umbral Conflagration. The main reason we're Umbral Conflagration is so that when we attack, we will summon a Umbral Blade, which means we don't have to worry about throwing down Umbral Blades to actually consume our shadows. And we want to be consuming our shadows because we don't want to have our shadows going over each other, because we only have a limit of 3. So if we go over 3, we don't consume a shadow and it doesn't dissipate, so it doesn't count for Umbral Blades. But if we're always constantly consuming our shadows, I can tell here, we're completely fine. So I want to be consuming shadows, right? And these Blade Storms, they also home in on enemies and stuff too, which is really, really nice for the build. All right, that's pretty much it for Cinder Strike here. Then for Decoy, damage, literally as much damage as possible. So 5 points into Boom for 100% increased area, so it helps our clear, as you can tell there. Then 3 points into Excessive Explosives. You have +2 to Decoy. You'd put 5 points in this. 3 points travel into Short Fuse, even more damage. Duration doesn't matter because it already is such a low duration anyways, as it explodes instantly. 1 point into Shrouded Core. This is the node that's allowing us to drop shadows, which will give us extra Umbral Blades, which will give us a little bit more oomph each time we decoy. Then 2 points travel to Burning Oil. Ignite does nothing for us. Then eventually 5 points in Meticulous Construction. I don't know why I don't have 5 points in this, but in the planner I will. And it makes us consume a lot of mana. So it's 72 mana per. That is why we get so much mana gain with our Cinder Strike, is just so that we can, sustain this insane amount of mana from Cinder Strike. From Decoy, right? And then of course 2 points into Grand Diversion, so that whenever we attack with Decoy, we get 3 with Shotgun and cause a lot of AoE. And it's nuts. It's like literally throw it and down and bam, whole pack is gone. Stereotypical shift setup. We want the actual shadow so that we get the Umbral Blades. We're grabbing the increased damage setup so that when we do our combo, like I can show you here, do our full combo, do even more damage. 700k per decoy, by the way. So that's 2.1 million damage overall, and that's not taking into account Umbral Blades, so pretty disgusting. So you need to make sure you shift, then decoy. Just make sure you shift, then decoy, and then you'll get the max damage for this increased damage. Then we take the shadow, of course, from our Umbral Blades, and then invulnerability. It's like pretty simple. The coal's really nice on bosses too. Then your stereotypical smoke bomb setup, these shadows, they will get consumed by our Cinder Strike and create more Umbral Blades. This is actually how we clear Monous. So we rotate between decoy, and then when we're waiting for decoy, we just throw down a smoke bomb behind us, which will create shadows. And then if we create these guys, they'll home in on enemies. And we use that to help clear, like we gather the enemies, because we got to wait 6 seconds for decoy, right? So it's like pretty annoying to wait 6 seconds for decoy. So it's very nice to have the extra shadow generation. And of course, just some dust shroud generation, so we deal more damage with Umbral Blades, pretty much. And that's pretty much it for Smoke Bomb. Then for Umbral Blades here, this is your stereotypical Umbral Blade setup for this kind of build. We take 1 point travel into Dawnfall, 1 point into precision cuts, 1 point into explosive blades, makes it so blades in the ground now arm after 0.5 seconds, but no longer can be recalled, meaning so they explode after a few seconds. Bam, that thing. Really cool explosion, by the way. Then 4 points into Burst of Agony, so we get more damage in AoE. There's an arming time of 0.5 seconds, so we at least get 40% more AoE and 40% more damage, which is nice. Then 4 points into Edge of Obscurity. This gives us damage with our Umbral Blades per Dust Shroud. When we throw down our thing, we get a bunch of Dust Shrouds. We also gain Dust Shrouds when hit, which is nice. We also, of course, want this node, Umbral Remnant. This is why we're able to summon so many Umbral Blades, is whenever shadows expire or when they're used, it makes it so they leave an Umbral Blade. So whenever we throw our decoy, it'll leave shadows, which then can be consumed, which turn into Umbral Blades, which is really cool. And then, of course, we go through Sword Thrower. So we only throw 1 sword. Doesn't matter because we're always only throwing 1 sword. Then 1 point to Lethal Darkness makes it so we proc Shadow Daggers. So the reason why we go Shadow Daggers is it just gives us a little bit of the extra oomph with our throwing attack damage. It's just like a 1 point wonder node. 1 point to Cacophony of Steel for the Blade Storm. It just gives us extra hits for not only for the throwing attack stuff, for shred, all that. It also just helps us apply more shadow daggers. And of course, obviously you go into all the blade storm stuff. You go into homing blade storms, go for the duration so they last longer, and just more damage. You can only have 3 blade storms up at once, though. You can't have more than 3 blade storms. But whenever we summon a max blade storm, like as you can tell there, we actually make an explosion. So it's actually beneficial for us, because I can show you here. Tell there, as I consume shadows and make them, they'll explode, which will give us even more clear, which is nice. And that's pretty much it for Umbral Blades. Now for the passive tree, we take 8 points into Swift Assassin for the attack speed. We want as much attack speed as humanly possible with this build, because the more attack speed, the more oil coating stacks we get. 4 points into Steady Hand for the HP. Obviously you want 8 eventually. 1 point travel to Guile, 5 points into evasion for the DR while moving, because when I'm moving through monoliths, I'm kind of like stutter stepping. This will give you the DR 50% of the time, which means that, you know, you'll feel a lot tankier. Trust me. If you do it like this, just hold down your left click and then hold right click, and you will stutter step through the monoliths. You will feel so much better. Trust me. Instead of just standing there doing this, you want to be stutter stepping. Stutter stepping means that you will take less damage overall, and also as well, it makes it easier to dodge things. It'll help you cancel animations as well. So stutter stepping is God. 5 points eventually in dodge and parry for the glancing blow. The dodge chance flat does turn into glancing blow as well, because we're apostasy. 4 points into sapping strikes. This on top of the mana gained at the top of marksman helps us sustain the obscene mana cost of decoy. Blade Dancer, it's your stereotypical Blade Dancer setup. 8 points into Cloak of Shadows for the dexterity, which gives us flat dodge, which gets turned into Glancing Blow, then Glancing Blow chance. 7 points of Shroud of Dust for the HP and the chance to gain Dust Shroud when hit. We want as much HP as possible since we're going Glancing Blow, which will benefit us overall, because if you don't know, Glancing Blow is 35% less damage taken on hit, which means the more HP we have, the better that Glancing Blow is, right? 5 points into Pursuit. The throwing damage is always nice, and of course the movement speed is really good. Then 1 point in Apostasy. Pretty much what this does is it takes our dodge chance, doubles it, and gives it to us as Glancing Blow, which means that as we invest into dodge, we get more Glancing Blow, which means that we have 30% more HP than it looks like here, which is really good, especially when you get up to 100%. Now, you are a little bit more like afraid of dots, like dot bats were really, really, really annoying. Like dot bats, oh my god, they're so annoying. But other than that, you're fine. Just dots are a little annoying with this build, because obviously you don't get the glancing blow. Then for Marksman, 8 points into draining arrows, as much attack speed as possible, as much sustain as possible. 1 point travel into Assassin's Quiver, 1 point travel into Missile Mastery, 1 point travel to Concentration, 10 points into Wound Maker. Crit vulnerability is very important for the build. It makes it so we actually crit. We hit a fuck ton, so most things get crit. So it's nice. Free crit, right? 8 points into Mediation, so you get a bunch of flat dodge, which gets turned into Glancing Blow. 1 point travel to Aerostorm, 10 points into Thief's Quiver. So I've been thinking about running this more. So this plus the idols, I was thinking about running it because this attack speed just gives us more oil coatings, right? It makes it feel better. So you might actually end up putting 6 points into this. And this on top of like a bunch of the idols. So there's like the bow attack speed idols. So the cooldown normally is really big, but there's not like other idols that help us, if that makes sense. So stuff like this might actually be really good. I gotta like give it a try. 1 point into Covering Fire to give us a Silver Shroud stack whenever that triggers, which is really good because it makes us auto dodge, which overrides Apostasy, by the way, if you didn't know. 4 points travel to Sharpshooter. We don't care about the increased damage per stack. We care about the 5 points into Death from Afar for all the armor shred, which allows us to do even more damage. The stun chance is pretty funny too because we end up stunning really big things with Decoy all the time. 5 points into Barrage of Pain. Since we're running crit vulnerability, we want a little bit of bait. We want a little bit of percentage crit to make the base crit so much better, and this is the perfect slot for it. 5 points in the Perfect Aim. So this makes it so once we reach 5 stacks, we gain 75 health per crit and 75% crit multi per stack. So it's like, well, 75% crit multi, which is a lot of crit multi, and then 75 health gained on crit. Let me show you. We crit a lot with this build. With all the little explosions and the Umbral Blades and all that. You know what that means? It means we gain a lot of HP back. So generally, that's very good. This is one of the best sustain sources in the game and one of the main reasons why Marksman is so strong. That's pretty much it for that. 1 point travel into Ethereal Arrows, then 5 points to Mana Wrap. Mana Warp, whatever. It pretty much makes it so we gain 15 mana on bow attack use. It makes our bow attack mana cost even more. Like for instance, this multi-shot's a lot, decoys a lot, like Hail of Arrows is a lot of mana, right? But since Cinder Strike is 0 mana, it doesn't give a shit about that node. So we just get a bunch of mana back. So it doesn't care that anything else, like everything else aren't bow attacks, so it doesn't really give a shit about it, which is really nice and helps us sustain such a ridiculous mana cost on Decoy. And that's pretty much it for the passive tree. Now for gearing, like I said, you want bow attack speed idols. I'm not running them because I'm dumb. You want bow attack speed idols. Obviously, you know, they're not the best thing in the world, but they're better than everything else. And it lets you get more oil coating stacks, which is always beneficial. Required uniques. Kelthan Blasting Agent. I haven't decided what I wanted to put on this legendary potential yet. Probably want crit multi, Cinder Strike levels, and resistance. Hell's Reach. I made this Hell's Reach. You want a Hell's Reach with attack speed as quick as possible. These things are very easy to farm in Follow the Outcast. That's how I got mine. And you can slam bow attack speed on it pretty quickly because you get so many. And bow attack speed's insane. Also, the required level is like 5 for the dungeon, which means you can do the base low tier dungeon. So if you're worried about dying, you don't have to worry about it. The fire pen's always good for us as well. The bow attack speed is good as well. We don't want so much bow attack speed, like I said. The fire pen applies to our decoy. So all in all, this is very strong. Helmet plus the decoy level. I just had this link around. You want plus the decoy level, vitality, HP, and endurance. You want plus the decoy level because having 2 extra decoy levels equals even more damage, right? Which is nice. Amulet, you want crit multi or throwing attack percentage, and then throwing attack fire damage flat, which is like, that's like representative of like 3 to 4 oil coating stacks, then frailty and resistance or HP. Bow, like I said, chest, I'm running Shadow Dagger effect because I'm running Shadow Daggers with Umbral Blades, but you can run vitality, HP. like vitality, dexterity, whatever, HP, dodge, resistance, whatever you need. Quiver, you want bow attack speed, you want bow attack speed quiver, you want as much attack speed as humanly possible. You want a little bit of crit chance, or you can run increased fire damage, which is nice. We're always wanting increased damage with this build. Then resistance, ring. You want throwing flat, throwing flat. You want double throwing flat, throwing flat, throwing flat, throwing flat, throwing flat. That is exactly what you want. Resistance, endurance, crit avoid. Belt, you want fire damage, cleanse, HP, you don't need mana regen. Flat, resistance, crit avoid, obviously, movement speed, probably you want, or resistances. Luraka's Claws, I've not legendary potential this one yet, but you could probably run crit chance, throwing attack damage, HP, crit avoid. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And these are really strong because that throwing crit multi, that applies to your Decoy, it applies to your Umbral Blades, so it's really nice for you. Boots, as much HP as possible, movement speed, like I said, best boots in the world. I love them so much. Then, of course, Kelthan Blasting Agent with, like, Cinder Strike levels and all that. And that's pretty much it for the gearing. With all that being said, thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you're at.